Hello. This story is called Waste of Life, the story of Three Strike King. In the shadowed underbellies of a crumbling city where the neon lights flickered like dying stars and the air reeked of regret and cheap whiskey, there lived a man they called Three Strike King. He wasn't born under that name, no one is. But life has a way of branding you with titles you never asked for. His real name was Marcus Hall, but to the streets, the cops, and the ghosts that haunted his nights, he was the king of bad luck. The fool who danced too close to the edge one too many times. This is his story, a tale of strikes that pile up like unpaid debts, leading him to a place between a rock and a hard place. With nowhere left to run, it's a waste of life. Plain and simple, the kind that makes you wonder if fate ever rolled the dice fair. Strike one, old. Marcus wasn't always a king of everything. Back in the 80s, he was just a kid from the wrong side of the tracks. Raised in a shotgun shack where the walls were thin and the dreams were thinner. His old man split when he was 5, leaving his mom to scrape by on factory wages and whatever odd jobs she could grab. By 18, Marcus was already feeling the weight of the world. Old before his time, they said. Kids got eyes like you seen a lifetime. The neighborhood elders would mutter. It started small, like it always does. A petty thief swiping a six pack from the corner store to numb the hunger pangs. But in this town, with its overzealous cops and zero tolerance vibe, that misdemeanor got bumped to a felony charge because of some outdated statute about intended to distribute or some bullshit. Strike one, he got probation, a record that allowed him a shadow and a nickname from the block. Old Man Hayes, even though he was barely out of his teens. That strike aged him overnight. Jobs dried up. No one hires a felon for legit work. He bounced between dead end gigs, washing dishes, hauling trash, anything to keep the lights on. But the system has marked him. Old at 19, carrying the baggage of a man twice his age. Life went on, but the strike lingered. Marcus tried to go straight, even enrolled in night school for a welding certificate. But every application asked about priors and every door slammed shut. He felt trapped, like the world was punishing him for a kid's mistake. One slip, he tells his reflection in the cracked mirror, and you're old news. Strike two, brain damage. Years passed, and Marcus clawed his way into a semi normal existence. He had a girl, Lena, with her warm smile and dreams of a house with a yacht. They had a kid on the way, and for a moment he thought he could outrun the past. By strike two, hit like a freight train, derailing everything. It was a ball fight, nothing epic, just a disagreement over a pool game that escalated when some drunks won first. Marcus defended himself, landed a punch, and the guys hit his head on the bar stool. Concussion, they said, but the courts assault with a deadly weapon, felony chart level because the stew was involved. Strike two, brain damage, not just to the victim, but to Marcus' soul. The guy recovered enough to press charges, and Marcus got 5 years in the state pen. Inside, it was hell, fights, isolation, the kind of place that breaks you. He took a beating early on, shanked in the yard over a misunderstanding, and came out with a permanent limp and headaches that never quit. Brain damage, the doctor called it later, traumatic from the cultivated stress and that one brutal hit to the skull. When he got out, Lena was gone. Kid raised by her folks who wouldn't let him near. The world has moved on, but Marcus was stuck. older, angrier, with a fog in his head that made thinking straight as joy. Jobs, forget it. Disability checks barely covered rent in a roach infected flophouse. He turned to odd hostels, boosting auto parts, nothing violent, just survival. But the strike had damaged more than his body. It scarred his mind. Paranoia set in. Every shadow was a cop, every glance a judgment. Second strike, the parole officer reminded him, and you're done. Marcus nodded, but inside he was screaming. Brain damage wasn't just physical, it was a slow rot of hope. Strike three, sex offender. By now, Three Strikes King was a legend in the worst way. A cautionary tale whispered in alleys. Marcus was pushing 40, gray at the temples, body worn from years of scraping by. He kept his head down, avoiding the old crew, even went to church on Sundays, but the streets don't forget, and neither does the law. It happened on a rainy night. A desperation drove driving him to a bad decision. A woman accused him of assault, said he grabbed her in the park. Marcus swore it was a misunderstanding. He's been asking for directions, high on painkillers for his headaches, but the cops didn't care. With two priors, it's accelerated fast. Sexual battery, felony charge, strike three. The evidence was shaky, and a he said, she said with no witnesses, but the DEA pressed hard. Habitual offender, they called him, invoking a three-strike law that turned a cloudy acquisition into a life sentence. The trial was a farce. Public defender overworked, Jerry biased by headlines screaming sex offender strikes again. Guilty, 25 to life minimum. Register offender for eternity. Even if the truth was murkier, sat in the courtyard, chains rattling, staring at the judge's gravel like it was a hand of God. Sex offender, him, the man who lost everything but never raised a hand at Lena. It was the final nail, breaking him worse than murderer in the eyes of society. Between a rock and a hard place, nowhere to go. Now Three Strikes King rots in a cell, the concrete walls closing in like jaws of regret. Between a rock, the unyielding bars of his past mistakes, and a hard place, the merciless grid of the justice system. He got nowhere to go, appeals denied, parole not for decades, if ever. His kid, now grown, visits sometimes, but the shame in those eyes is worse than his solitude. Lena, long gone, remarried, living the life she dreamed of. It's a waste of life, this story. Marcus wasn't a monster. He was a project of a broken world. Poverty, bad luck, a system that stacks the deck against the little guy. One strike made him old. The second damaged his brain and the spirit. The third turned him into a poser. He couldn't have been a welder, a dad, a regular Joe. Instead, he's the king of nothing, dethroned by three cruel blues. As the years ticked by in that gray tomb, Marcus wondered, was it worth it? The strikes, the labor, the endless nothing? In the end, life's too short for such waste, but for Three Strikes King, it stretches out forever. A coxinating tale etched in iron. Here's chapter 2. Waste of life, the fourth strike, doorway to the abyss. In the cold bowels of Ironwood State Penitentiary, where the walls reek with condensation and the scream of the damned echoed like a twisted sympathy. Three Strikes King, Marcus Hall, faced his eternal damnation. But prison wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a nightmare that twisted reality into something far worse. You see, that second strike, the one that left him with brain damage, wasn't just a physical scar. It cracked open something deeper, something unholy. During that shank attack in the yard, as blood pooled and his vision blurred, Marcus didn't just hover on the edge of death, he crossed over. For a split second, he became a doorway between the gritty hell of the living world and the swirling chaos of the spiritual realm. And through that door slithered a demon, launching onto his soul like a parasite. That was his fourth strike, born from the second, possession, a curse that turned his life sentence into an endless war for control. Marcus discovered it slowly in the haze of recovery. At first, he blamed the headaches, the pounding that felt like cameras forging his skull anew. But then came the whispers, loud, guttural voices in language he didn't know, urging him to lash out, to embrace the violence he always restrained. In the mirror of his shell, his reflection sometimes grinned back with eyes that wasn't his, pitch black, bottomless voids promising observation. The demon called itself Volroth, or at least that's what it hissed in his dreams. It fed on his regrets, growing stronger with every memory of lost chances, the stolen six pack that aged him, the ball fight that broke him, the accusation that branded him. Volroth was content with whispers. He wanted the throne of his body to turn Marcus into a vessel for chaos in a mortal world. Every day was a battle, a brutal tug of war for dominance over his mind and flesh. Morning started with ritual Marcus preached together from smuggled books on the occult and half remembered prayers from his church days. He etched protective signals into the scale floor with a sharpened spoon, chanting under his breath to keep Volroth at bay. But the demon fought dirty. During jail time, it surged forward, making his hand tremble with the urge to stab a fellow inmate with a plastic fork. In a yard, it flooded his thoughts with violence of escape, with visions of escape, ripping through gauze like paper, blood painting the fence red. Marcus would drop to his knees, clenching his head, muttering, "Not today, you bastard, not today." The other prisoners thought he was crazy, whispering about the loony king who talked to himself. Guards wrote it off as prison psychosis, up in his meds that only dog ears but never silenced the beast within. The fourth strike amplified everything. Because of that brain damage, the crack in his defense, Volroth could slip through more easily, blurring the lines between realms. Marcus started seeing things, ghostly figures at the corner of his cell, souls of the executed wandering the halls, begging for release. Once during a lockdown, he watched a translucent inmate phase through the bars, his face twisted in internal agony, mouthing warnings about the demon's plan. Volroth laughed through Marcus' lips at that. A sound now chilled even the hardened lifers. "You're the doorway, flesh bag," it growled. "Open wide and let the flood in." Marcus resisted, drawing on the scrapes of his humanity. The memory of Lena's smile, his kids' laughter from that one visit. He fought back with sheer will, forcing the demon into retreat. But each victory left him weaker, more hollow. Well, it's always a price to pay. Night was the worst. In the dark, when the prison slept, Fulworth would unleash his four assaults. Marcus' bodies would convulse, possessed limbs thrashing against the bunk, eyes rolled back as demons tried to hijack his voice for incarnation that would shatter realities. He waked bruised, throat raw from suppressed screams, knowing he was losing ground. The fourth strike wasn't on any rhapsody. It was etched into his essence. Prison docs diagnosed schizophrenia, but Marcus knew better. This was no mental break. It was spiritual warfare. A demon exploiting the fracture from strike two to claim a fourth final blow. As the months bleed into years, Marcus teetered on the brink. Between the rock of his unyielding possession and the hard place of a life behind bars, there was nowhere to go but inward into the fray. He became a relentless guardian, sealing the doorway as best he could to prevent Fulgurad from releasing hell on earth. But how long could one broken man hold back the tide? Whispers spread through the prison grapevine. Three Strikes King was cursed, a man fighting shadows no one else could see. Some inmates shot him out for exorcism, sharing their own demons in harsh tones. Others stayed clear, fearing the contagion. In the end, Marcus' waste of life took on a twisted purpose. He wasn't just surviving, he was the thin barrier between words. Every day he wrote the fight was a every day he won the fight was a victory for the living, but the cost mounted. Furroth grew cunning, promising power, revenge on a system that broke him. Reunion with his family, temptations that chipped away at his resolve. Would he hold the line, or would the first strike finally shatter him, opening the floodgates to obsolescence? The story of the three Strikes King isn't over yet. In his spiritual realms, time bends and doorway swings both ways. But for now, in that forsaken shell, the battle rages on, a waste of life, redeemed only by the fight itself. Well, that guy had it tough. I mean, bad luck since he can remember, and then he ended up being possessed by a demon fighting for control. Wow. Well, if you'd like that story, let me know and give me a thumbs up. Thanks.